Welcome to the SwineTime podcast here at Pipestone. I'm your host, Spencer Wayne. I'm one of the staff veterinarians here out of this location, and also one of the owners in Pipestone Holdings. I'm here with one of my partners, Hannah Walkus, who's not my boss. I said it before. She's my boss's 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 boss, or something like that. She runs everything here, and a very bright person I've known for a long time, and I'm happy to have her with our special guest who's not here but is joining us by Teams or by remote participation, and that is Jack Uldrich, who's a futurist. And before we get into what that is, I just want to take a moment to say, why did we have a futurist on, or why do we have Jack on? And the reason would be we had a producer meeting, we call it a producer summit, back in August. We had several speakers. Jack was one, and Jack talked about futurism, or his views of what the future of agriculture would be, and gave some good insight and advice to our audience there. It was a very interesting talk, and we thought it would be great to have Jack share things with us today in this podcast. And so I'll turn it over to Hannah, who had a few things she wanted to say about Jack and his background. We can ask you about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we had Jack in Sioux Falls at our meeting back in August. So it was a lot warmer back then, Jack, than it is in Pipestone, Minnesota today. So a little different outside. But now at that meeting, you did a fantastic job sharing with our audience how you prepare for a future that you can't predict. And the future is always changing, and you shared a lot of really good insight in how we should be good students of that. And so we just wanted to circle back with you a couple of months later as a follow-up to those that were there, but then also introduce you and your concepts for futurism to more of our clients that weren't able to be there. And so maybe before we do that, Jack, if you could give us a little bit of background about yourself and what your experiences have been to make you a futurist.
Yeah, so I'm a lifelong resident of Minnesota. I'm a graduate of Drake University, but after Drake, I went into the Navy. I served as an intelligence officer, got out, went to graduate school in strategic planning at the University of Minnesota. Then I went back to the work in the Pentagon as a strategic planner, and then through a curious twist of fate, a few years later, I ended up back in Minnesota, where I met a fellow by the name of Jesse Ventura. Make a long story short, I ended up serving in his cabinet as the director of the Office of Strategic Long-Range Planning. And that really got me thinking a lot deeper about the future. And because agriculture is such an important component of Minnesota's economy, that sort of brought me into agriculture. And while I've been speaking on futurism and writing about technological trends for the last 2 decades, I have recently made a decision to focus specifically on farming and agriculture, but I've really been working as a futurist on my own for the past 20 years, but that's my background.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think we could have an entire podcast dedicated to the things you saw in the Jesse Ventura cabinet.
That's so exactly right.
Maybe that will be a future podcast, Spencer. We should put that on the calendar. I
think if you're thinking of out-of-the-box, unconventional thinking, you have no better background than that. Hey, I'm curious, Jack. You're a Minnesota native. Are you from the Twin Cities, or what's your hometown, or where are you actually from originally? I didn't see that in your bio.
Yeah, So I'm originally from Minneapolis, and I still live in southwest Minneapolis. I went to high school up at St. John's Prep, which is on the campus of St. John's University. And then my family is primarily from Stearns County, so spent a lot of time there growing up.
Sure.
Yeah. My wife and I go there in the spring for the maple syrup, the sap collection at, I think it's at St. John's or St. Ben's, one of the two.
It is St. John's.
Yeah.
I know John Ginslinger, the forester up there. I don't do the maple syrup, but I go up there every May to plant oak trees on the campus. So yeah, it's beautiful. I love the campus. I love the university.
So pretty. And we only live in Morris, which is just west of there, another hour south of Alexandria. So
yeah,
familiar with the area.
Oh, and I should just mention, I'm really excited. I'm actually going to start teaching a course up at St. John's this semester, helping students think about the future, both their immediate future, their midterm future, and their long-term future. So neither here nor there. I just thought I would throw that in.
Yeah, you can add adjunct professor to your resume right next to Jesse Ventura. That'll be good.
We're thinking about the topic of, there's a topic, but your role or your title as a futurist. And if you asked me a while ago, like, what's a futurist? I would have said, I watched Conan O'Brien years ago when La Bamba, the band leader, and his set would come up and they put the weird collar on and they would do in the year 2000, and they would try to, and then after it got to be the year 2000 and beyond, they still called it seeking into the, looking into the future of the year 2000. But it would have been somebody predicting things that maybe were really obvious or wild, or I didn't know. What is a futurist? If you want to explain it, that's going to do a better job than Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, first, let me just tell you this. I've written a number of books on emerging technology, and years ago I wrote one on nanotechnology, but I also work with speakers speakers agencies, and the agency was having a really hard time sort of trying to describe what nanotechnology was. And so she said, can I just call you a futurist? I'm like, I don't know. And then so I went on the internet. I'm like, do you have to have formal credentials? Like, do you have to have a degree to be called a futurist? And the short answer is you don't. So anyone can call themselves a futurist. And so, but to describe what I do as a futurist, I use the acronym, I call it the big AHA, but AHA is the acronym, and it stands for awareness, humility, and action. We need to be aware of the trends that are going to potentially transform our job, our communities, our country, our world. Next, the world is changing so fast that we need humility to the idea that the way we thought about things yesterday might not be how we think about those things in the future. And I've written a number of books on the concept of unlearning, that frequently people understand the world's going to change, but what they have a really hard time doing and why they miss the future is they can't unlearn what it is they know from the past. And then the final A in the acronym stands for action. As a futurist, I don't claim to predict the future. The only way to predict the future is to create it yourself. So I like to help my clients and companies I work with take the action to future-proof themselves and create a desirable future for themselves, their clients, their customers, and their industry.
Okay, one final comment on that. I don't want this to come across as rude, but I was curious because the futurist title, it's almost like the title of prophet, where I'm a prophet, and prophets are shown to be real or not by the fact that things either come to materialize or not, they come true or not. So is there any metric that you have as a futurist or that anybody would have as a futurist to say, I predicted the smartphone and look, it happened? You got any examples, or how would you even know if you're a good futurist or not?
Yeah, well, first, just to tie the link back to prophecy in the Bible, it says, we know imperfectly and we will prophesize imperfectly. And so this gets back to the humility. Like, I will talk about these trends, but how they all unfold is I'm very aware and try and tell my clients, like, I'm trying to do my best to make you aware of these trends, but how exactly they'll unfold, I don't know. And then what I also do, at least with my predictions, and because I've written so many books, I have to hold myself accountable. And I've made some predictions in the past, and frequently I thought technologies were going to take root faster than they otherwise did. And I have to look in the mirror and say, I got that wrong. And why was I wrong? And every year I try and do an article, and I'll send it to you. I just did 12 trends that I think are going to transform agriculture in 2025. But at the end of 2025, I will go back and say, I got these right. I probably got these wrong. I completely missed this. And so in that way, I'm always trying to become a better futurist. So those are some of the metrics of how I try to hold myself accountable.
Okay.
Hey, you sparked my interest there, Jack. So you said you just got done writing an article that highlighted your 12 trends that are going to transform agriculture for 2025. Now you got me curious. What do you think the top trend is going to be, or the top two trends?
Well, I think that artificial intelligence is going to continue to be a leading trend. I think the next one is, and while this might not affect the swine industry directly, it will directly affect a lot of the farmers. The advances in sustainable aviation fuel are moving fast and furious. And since I was with you in August, in September, Delta had their first ever flight from Minneapolis to New York using sustainable aviation fuel, and it was from Camelina. But out in Montana, they're building a $1.4 billion facility to produce that. So I think that's a second trend. And then I'm quite optimistic about continued advances in biological, sort of putting bacteria in seeds to help both increase nutrient uptake in crops and perhaps fight off diseases. And then to get back to the swine industry, I guess I would say the fourth is the continued advances in gene editing technology are going to be astounding. Whether the government approves all of those and how the customers react to those things is, again, it sort of gets into the area of humility, and I don't quite know how it will unfold. But those are four that I addressed in the article. And again, I'll share it with you, and you can hold me accountable along with myself at the end of the year.
Hey, Jack, you mentioned those predictions or those three or four areas. I think a lot of people would be, I wasn't even aware of that. But for AI, almost everybody's exposed to AI in the form of ChatGPT. And for me or my kids or my wife, other people are using it. It's incredible, really, the intuitiveness at which it interacts with you. And then you think there's got to be some application with an AI of some sort in our data, our production data, any kind of our data here at Pipestone, that somebody should be able to look at this, what's going on, and make better sense of it than smart people can, just because of the incredible power. What does that look like? Because how do you go from ChatGPT to implementation of an AI tool in agriculture? What does that look like? What will it look like? Go ahead. I'll quit talking.
Yeah, the first thing is these advances in artificial intelligence are moving really rapidly. That ChatGPT just came out 2 years ago, but here's how I try to summarize it for my clients is when it came out, it could do a 5-minute task in 5 seconds. And you're like, okay, well, what's a 5-minute task? That's like, draft me an email. You can now just say, write me this email, and it does it quite quickly, and they're usually pretty good. 2 years later, we're up to a 5-hour task. And I don't know if you watch any football games, but there's this new iPhone 16 commercial, and a wife kind of forgets to get her husband a present. She realizes she's in trouble, and so she goes into the kitchen, and then just into her phone, she says, make me a video with this song with photos of my kids playing with my husband. That I used to do that every birthday for my wife, was make her a video, and it took me about 5 hours. Now it's done in 5 seconds. But here's what's coming in the next year. They think 5-month tasks. So what are some 5-month tasks that might be beneficial for farmers? Well, first, let me just say a 5-hour task would be farm valuation. Say you want to sell your land. And of course, there are experts out there who could give you a very accurate assessment, and you should use those. But if you can't afford that, the Farm Business Network has their equivalent of ChatGPT called Norm AI. And it does a pretty good job, and it's free. And so to your listeners, don't take it as gospel, but if you don't have anything else, I think it does a pretty good job. But then what's a 5-month task? Well, a lot of farmers have to be doing a better job about planning for succession, and that's a very complicated issue. And if you can drop all of your data in and overlay it with market conditions and future market forecasts and things like that, you can begin getting the framework of how you might want to begin thinking about your succession plan. And so those are just practical applications, but I think the facial recognition technology for feed optimization for hogs is going to continue to get better. AI is already being used to get out in front of certain diseases, but I think it's going to catch it even quicker. And so even a few days in certain diseases is a really big difference. I mean, we've been reading about the bird flu and how that might transmute into it's already affecting some dairy farmers. Could it spread to other areas? And if AI can help give us even a few days advance warning to that, that's really powerful. The other thing is, and this is one of my trends, Microsoft recently came out with a new AI product all around weather forecasting, and they claim it's 5,000 times faster. Now, that doesn't mean it's 5,000 times better, but last year they could do a hyper-localized weather forecast about 15 minutes in advance if a storm was coming. They can now do an hour. But those extra 45 minutes, if you can bring your animals into safety, if you can get your labor off the field, you can get your equipment off the field, those 45 minutes are really valuable. And so I think that's what we're going to start seeing. It's this low-hanging fruit and stuff that we weren't even really thinking about, but it's like, wow, that's making my life better. And it is, and I think we're going to continue to see things along those lines.
Yeah, and I think, as our listeners listen to, all those things you're describing, there's probably some that are like, oh yeah, I'm using Chat GPT in my normal life today, and it's been outstanding. And then, there's the other side of the spectrum that is like, this just freaks the heck out of me. Like it sounds cool. I'm sure I could, benefit from it, but I don't even know how to begin using this. This just seems like Japanese to me. And so
What, a ChatGPT or something different?
Just all of the AI technology. Technology can sometimes be scary as far as how do you actually implement it and how do you learn it and how do you use it. But I think that's where the next generation of the farm family can actually bring a lot of benefit. And one of the things that you talked about at the summit, Jack, that I learned from you is the concept of reverse mentoring. And how when we're growing up and we're trying to, better ourselves, Spencer, we talk about how do you find that person that has more season than you and more experience than you and have them teach you. Well, Jack opened my eyes to the reverse mentor concept, which is how do you find the younger person that thinks differently and actually is probably better at technology and is more adaptive to doing some of this. And as we look at the farm families that we work with, there's a really big opportunity for that generation to bring some of this technology to back to the family farm and really make an impact right out of the gate. I think that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if I could just pick up on that, I really do encourage everyone to get a reverse mentor. And I'm not saying that those of us who are older shouldn't continue to mentor the younger generation. Of course, we should do that. But this world is changing so fast that my guess is many of the younger people are already playing around with ChatGPT and Claude and Pi. Those are just some of the other free AI platforms. But they're getting much better at the prompts, the way to ask questions, the way to sort of recognize when ChatGPT, they call them hallucinations, but they're really lies. Like ChatGPT is just lying. It's just not telling the truth. And so, but we can begin sifting through that. But I also think, like, even things like social media, like I know a lot of people don't have time for it, but farmers in general have a wonderful story to tell. And I think there's so many people, especially urban people who live in the urban areas, who just have no idea of everything that you're doing, and use these platforms to tell your story or to find new customers or to find new markets. Just because you're not comfortable with ChatGPT or AI or social media, ask your reverse mentors. And those of us who are blessed with kids or grandkids, we have built-in reverse mentors. And those of us who have ever had to ask our kids how to set up a TV or, our computer or do something on our computer know how to use a reverse mentor. We just have to take it up a notch, that they really do have a level of intelligence around these new technologies that we don't possess.
Yeah, thinking about jobs also in the future, and if you were a computer programmer in the last 20, 30 years, that was a special job. I can't do it, you can't do it, but the computer programmer can program. Then if you go to ChatGPT and you realize, well, ChatGPT can computer program, it'll do that job to some degree. But it makes me think, this thing is so smart, there's got to be like a very special group of people that know how to operate, or true AI engineers that can set something up for a company like ours or the neighbor's company. Or if you're trying to develop something in your farm business, how do you participate in it? You have to have somebody that understands that technology, and it probably goes beyond just my daughter and her friends. It's probably somebody that's trained in that, and that's an emerging job, I think, that's got to be out there. Right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Maybe we'll get this to a little bit later, but I have a free weekly newsletter. I call it my Friday Future 15. And because we're recording this on a Friday, I just sent out this week's. And LinkedIn had their 25 fastest growing jobs for the coming year. And 3 of them were related to artificial intelligence. But to bring this back at a practical level, I know that Iowa State University, and I suspect the University of Minnesota, some of the other leading agricultural universities are having these courses in AI and maybe even some of the community and technical colleges, that I think that there are going to be the students who are already thinking about this, studying it, staying on top of it. And we have to have enough humility to say, hey, to hire them, work with them, and say, tell me what I don't know. Tell me how I can use this. Because just so you know, like, this is my full-time job trying to stay on top of this, and even I can't do it. And I do have 2 reverse mentors who I'm constantly pinging saying, what aren't I aware of? And they're helping me stay on top of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we use AI and artificial intelligence and ChatGPT as kind of a big example in the moment because it's a really hot topic. But to your point, Jack, there's lots of things out there. Things are always changing. There's going to be a next, and there's going to be a next after that. And I think the point you really brought home for me was you just got to spend time thinking about the future and expanding your mind to think about what could be next and not just the now. So I thought it, I read an article several years ago that talked about spending time to think. And, we're always so busy in the day-to-day and what we have to do today. And then sometimes we think about the past because we're spending time focusing on, past production numbers or closeouts and things that happened in the past. But really for businesses and families to move forward, you got to spend time thinking about the future and carving out time to do that. Because that's how you can really open your mind up to what the next is, and you can skate to where the puck is going, maybe not just where the puck is today. And so if you want to share a little bit more about your thoughts on that, I think that would be helpful for our viewership.
Yeah, hey, before he starts, though, before that topic, I saw it in your write-up, I knew one person that intentionally stopped and thought about her future regularly, and it was Hannah. So when this came up, I thought, I know somebody does that. It's Hannah. She intentionally thinks about her future, but that's rare. So I'm sorry I cut you off, but please comment as you saw fit.
Yeah, no, I will. First, I just want to say one other thing about reverse mentors. If any of your listeners are still thinking of AI, meaning artificial insemination, it might be time to get a reverse mentor. AI is artificial intelligence. So that might be just a good way to discern things. But this idea, I actually call it my Future Friday 15. Every Friday, just take 15 minutes to think about the future. And that's why I named my newsletter that. And I have 5 articles, and I even say to my subscribers, and you can sign up for free on my website, which is just my name, it's jackuldrich.com, and say, just read one and engage in the difficult work of thinking about what this trend might mean for your farm, for your business, for anything. And so, but most of us, especially in the agriculture industry, I know your incredible work ethic. And if you were actually just see someone in their office with their hands up and their feet on the table, you wouldn't think to yourself, wow, that person is one hardworking person. You'd think they're one lazy SOB. But my point is, we have to carve out that time. And I know a lot of farmers do it, but another thing I would encourage you to do is, like, once a quarter, just take an hour. George Shultz, who was Ronald Reagan's former Secretary of State, once had, and he called it the Shultz Hour, and he said, I am paid to think strategically, and I need to close my door. I'm not going to take any calls unless it's from the president or my wife. Otherwise, I don't want to be disturbed. And then he said, sometimes we have to waste an hour to make sure we're not wasting a year. And I love that idea, that this time spent thinking is not a waste of time. In fact, it is some of your most valuable, critical time. And other leaders, and I think the more senior you go, the more time you have to carve out. Some leaders call it a think week, where they go away and they get disconnected from all of this information. There's this wonderful quote that says, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. We are so inundated by data with our smartphones and the ticker symbols on cable news and newspapers and radio and other stuff. But a lot of that is just information. It's not really what we have to be focused on. And the way to begin really centering your attention is to get away from it and spend first once a week, 15 minutes, once a quarter, an hour, and if you can, once a year, a whole week, just thinking deeply about the future.
All right. Think about other technologies. Just you listed the things you thought were up in front of us. You didn't mention one thing that kind of been in the back of my mind, and it's not a sexy technology really compared to these other things because it's old as a concept, but it's automation and robotics as labor becomes harder and harder. Is there anything you could see specifically on the ag front or livestock front that's going to be some area that gets developed that's interesting to you?
Yeah, to me, what's really interesting is that first, artificial intelligence is now being incorporated into robotic technology. So the robotic technology is actually getting smarter and can work in closer confines with humans. So many times we have to think about how these technologies are going to enable the growth and the facilitation of other technologies. I also think that robotic technology is becoming more affordable. I might have, and I can't remember if in August, I might have showed it. There's a robotic device that's developed by a company out in Seattle, and it's primarily for large crop farmers, and it uses artificial intelligence and laser technology, and it can zap weeds. And 2 years ago, it could zap 100,000 weeds in an hour. Last year, 200,000. But what I found interesting is there is now a new startup in New Zealand who essentially it's the same technology, only it's a lot more affordable, and you can actually strap it on to an existing technology. And so I think that some of this technology is going to become more affordable. I know that many of your farmers, if you're looking at robotic technology, for feed and for other purposes, it might not make sense today, but as the technology gets better and becomes more affordable, I think there's going to come a point in time where you have to do the ROI and then have the courage to pull the trigger. So I think we're going to continue. I didn't get out to the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. It's going on this week, but I was just reading an article this morning, and John Deere, Case IH, Kubota, they're all out there, and they're all demonstrating their robotic technology, their artificial intelligence, their smart sprayers, all of this stuff. But I do encourage your listeners to think it's going to be the convergence of this technology. Suddenly, as we can put the AI and laser and sensor technology and satellite technology is getting better. So as that gets better, we're going to have a better idea of what the weather for tomorrow is going to be and when you should bring your equipment into the field or when you should water. So I think it's going to be this convergence of technologies that are going to make robotic technology even smarter and bring it into the workforce or bring it into the farm place. And then, of course, the overriding issue is as labor shortages continue to be a problem, if we can't find the workers, we're going to have to figure out another way to do that. So that might be this overarching macro sort of trend that's pushing robotic technology forward.
All right, Hannah, we're pushing on time now,
Yeah.
so I don't want to. I could ask questions forever, and I'm holding myself back.
Well, I
do you have
think
any things?
I think this is such an interesting topic, and I know I enjoy it, and I think a lot of our listeners do too. I think Jack just permanently earned himself a reoccurring guest on this podcast, Spencer, from what I'm hearing. So I don't know if that's okay with you, Jack, but we might invite you back more often just to give us updates of what's happening.
I would absolutely love it. And as I was saying before we started recording, I'm now making a discerned decision to focus primarily on farming and agriculture in my work as a futurist. And so I would love to come back as a regular guest and help your listeners stay on top of the trends and carve out the time to think about how to utilize these things. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What are the weaknesses? What are the strengths of these various things? So I'd love to do it.
Hey, and as we close this down, I just realized I've got a book, and you've published a few. This one, I'll hold it up to the camera a little bit. You can see it. A Smarter Farm, How AI is Revolutionizing the Future of Agriculture by Jack Uldrich. Probably get it on Amazon, I'm guessing, but I'm going to steal this one from Abby for a while and read it myself. I just saw it today. I didn't realize you'd put that together.
Yeah, and just so you know, Don't even buy it on Amazon. I will make a free PDF copy available to anyone who wants it. So I'll send it to you, Spencer, Hannah. You can get it out. And I wrote it a year ago, and I call it sort of AI for dummies. And I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. I was the dummy, but it's a really simple book. You can read it in less than 40 minutes. And it's just a primer on artificial intelligence. But again, to being a reoccurring guest, another reason these advances in AI are coming so fast and furious. I'd love to come back occasionally and share the latest, greatest with you and your listeners.
Yeah, no, we'd enjoy that. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking time to stop back and visit with us again today, Jack. We really appreciate it, and we'll plan to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.
All right.
Jack Uldrich.
My pleasure.
Thank you. The SwineTime podcast was created for the pork industry and individual pork producers around the country. Hosted by me, Dr. Spencer Wayne with Pipestone Veterinary Services, the podcast contains pork industry news, advancements in animal care, and how to enhance your productivity. Find the SwineTime podcast at www.pipestone.com or on your favorite listening platform.